Welcome to Uplifting Life Talk Show with your host, Rita Robinzine.
Are a lot of types of quilts. I'm going to go back and share again. I told you what a quilt was not. Crocheting and knitting is not a quilt, but the simple definition of a quilt is when you have what's referred to as the top or the quilt top, and that's the fabrics that have been pieced together. Next, you would have the batting, which I know you can't really see this, but if you could imagine a piece of fleece or flannel, some soft cotton, or it could be wool or variation of cotton and polyester. And also this puffy polyester batting, this is what would go on the inside of the quilt. And then you would have a simple piece of fabric on the back. It could be as simple as, cotton muslin, or it could be a piece top, and your quilt could then be reversible. But having all three layers together and then stitching through the three layers, that is what makes a quilt a quilt. And maybe able to see it a little bit on here, how I've stitched this simple heart design and echoed it out, and then put this blue binding around those three layers. That made this little quilt. This is one of the first real quilts that I made. This was back in 1997. Okay. That first piece that I attempted, when I surprised my grandmother, it was somewhat of a disaster, but my son, to this day, this is his most favorite quilt.
Oh.
He's been away from home for about 8 years now. And when he comes home, he looks for that quilt. Even after I've hidden it away, he will find that quilt, and that's what he wants.
Why is it his favorite?
Well, he knows and understands that it was made with love. Mm. And it was, after the one that my grandmother gave to him, that was his second quilt. And I can show you, it's not my most favorite, but it was made with lots of love. It was a very simple, it started off being very simple, just blocks.
Okay.
Different blocks. And I didn't understand about quilting, so I didn't actually quilt it. I bought an already quilted piece of fabric and attached it together. So it was a little disappointment to find out that I really quilted. But one of the quilts that I saw in this book, a friend of mine sent me this box of postcards, and it contained that same quilt that just kept coming back to me. And because I had all my grandmother's fabrics, I decided I would just take a stab at making something similar.
Oh, wow. That is beautiful. Oh, wow.
And this is another of those made with a lot of love. I hand stitched or hand quilted all of this.
Wow. Beautiful.
I just love it. I just love doing different things. I have a ton of quilts, so you have to tell me when my time is up, because we
well, I want to ask you, if someone decides that they want to learn how to quilt, how how will they begin that? They may not have the luxury of having a grandmother show them how to begin quilting. So what would you recommend to them to start as a place to start quilting?
Call me. It's a good place to start. I have literally tried, Rita, to get every person that I come in contact with, man, woman, boy, girl, to at least try and see if you like it. Now, there have been people that have come to me in a similar fashion as I did with my grandmother and said, I want to do this. And the commitment wasn't there. You're not going to make a quilt overnight. As you can see from my sampler quilt, that's 20 years in the making. I know I need to just say I'm going to finish it, but I have a lot of those type of projects. There are people that now, because of the internet, they can just, Google beginning quilting, and there are people that will step you, they've recorded videos to step you through how to get started. That doesn't work for everyone. I've been contacted by people saying, hey, that's not helping me. 2 minutes in, I have a question and I can't ask. So they want some interaction. I have attempted to do a virtual session with a couple of people, and with 2 people that they were like, okay, that's really not working. I'm coming to your house. So
okay.
They've come over, and I can't say no to a quilter. I can't. And especially, if you come the first time, and there's been people, we've sat at the table, we've, understood the beginning processes, and I don't hear from them again, or they'll say, oh, I really don't have time. They don't have the same passion that I do. They may pick it up later, and that's fine. There have been some people, though, I'm like, you got here at 5, it's 11:30 now, p.m. We got to wrap this up. They keep going and going. I'm like, okay, it's 2:00 a.m. You can keep doing this going to bed. And I mean, the next morning, they're still at my house. They just won't. I mean, this has happened at least 4 times.
Okay.
They will not leave. And I'm like, but I'm glad that they enjoy it, and that they have the same passion about quilting as I do.
Well, that's good. Well, going back to your passion of quilting, what was the inspiration behind Sankofa and Phenomenal Women Mathematicians?
Sankofa. I have a dear friend. It's funny how we both, our paths just crossed. We were actually supposed to be applying to graduate school, and we were on campus, and for whatever reason, neither one of us ever completed the process. Life happens. I ended up getting married and having kids, and he had a different journey, but we kept in touch. And he has turned out to be one of the greatest friends I could have ever wished for a lot of different reasons. But his name is Pianki Sankofa. And that's how I learned about the West African Adinkra symbols. Sankofa is one of those symbols. And let's see here. I want to show the symbol, the Sankofa symbol here.
Wow. Okay.
But there was a point in my life where I was having some trouble with my children, and they needed a strong mentor around. And one of the programs that my youngest son became a part of required that he have a mentor committed to also participating in this program for a year. And I was like, wow, I really want you to do this, but who's going to commit to putting this kind of time and energy into somebody else's kid? So we wrote out a list of people, and Pianki was the first person I called. And I mean, before I could get the words out, sure, Michelle, I would love to do it. I was going to ask you about it anyway. And I was like, really? I mean, and this required a lot. This was a lot to ask of someone. You know, it required them traveling out of town. It was a lot, but he did that, and I mean, it just, I didn't know what to do to thank him, but I was in a fabric store, a quilt shop, and I saw all of this wonderful black and gold fabric, and coincidentally, he's an alpha,
Mm-hmm.
and I could not leave this fabric at the quilt shop, and I wanted to surprise him and present him with this quilt. And I worked on it, got it done, and I was like, oh wow, there's an exhibit coming up. I need a quilt for the exhibit. So I submitted this, not thinking he would, you know, hear about it or anything. But of course, with his name on it, this quilt won I think second place best of show at the Atlanta Quilt Festival. Anyway, it made it hard for me to release it to him because, you know, it won an award, and I'm very proud of it. But he had to go to Kuwait. He was in the Army National Guard, and he was gone longer than the initial plan. But he's back home in the States, and he's safe, and he's actually retired from the military now. But he asked me to, you know, just hold on to this when he was gone, and we haven't connected so that I can release it back to him. But this is one of my favorite quilts. The other quilt you asked about was the mathematician quilt, and I don't know if you knew this. I majored in computer science, and so I'm a computer science major, so I did a lot of math. When the movie Hidden Figures came out, oh my God. I mean, that was like the best thing ever for me. It was such a great movie. It was a great story about a wonderful woman. You know, a lot of it was filmed in the AU Center. So when I saw,
I didn't know that.
yes,
Okay.
even myself, when we watched the movie, my son was like, Mom, that's Morehouse. I'm like, yeah.
Gotta go back and watch now just to
Yeah.
find those places.
When Taraji was running back and forth across campus in the rain, or what, I was like, how many days did I do that? How many times? Because although Spelman had they offered the degree, the more advanced classes were at Morehouse. And of course, I had classes at Clark and Morris Brown as well. But at any rate, I have always had an interest in math and technology. When I was in high school, this was high school geometry. We were studying about parabolas, and I'm not going to get into all the details about it. I did give someone a math lesson once, and when I crossed paths with him and his wife again, they live in Rhode Island, and they were in an exhibit in Atlanta, and it was like, hey, it's the math lady. I'm like, no, I'm a quilter. But in high school, when we were studying and solving these equations and drafting them, it created a really nice design, which later people used it to create string art, is what they call it. It's like using a spiral graph, if you remember drawing the little circles and triangles and all. Well, anyway, I made a book cover for my geometry book, and I did the string art, and I was so proud of it, and I still have it to this day. And when I started quilting, I just kept trying to figure out how could I incorporate some of the geometry that goes into quilt making into a quilt. So this was my opportunity to pay tribute to not only Katherine Johnson, but Dr. Sylvia Bozeman from Spelman.
Mhm.
And also we have, I can get this turned around. We have Dr. Faulkner from Spelman.
Remember her too.
Yeah, those were, if you were a math major or minor, oh, you would the
Math is
vote.
not my thing. I was
But
political science.
so this quilt has a lot of math related elements. one of the things, and I was talking to someone about this the other day, and it started going over their head, but I get excited about technology when you break it down all the way down and how computers work and with the number systems, and we're converting, the electrical pulses to ones and zeros and binary numbers, which I have that here to be explained if anybody's interested. But then here on the bottom, I have everybody knows this, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, to find the hypotenuse of a triangle. And so I have the formula here. You can't really see it, but I have the formula here at the bottom. And that can literally be used and solved to create these squares,
Wow.
which put together created this triangle. It can be a bit much, but
that could be a way, though, to get a young person interested in math.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that is the significance of that quilt.
I'm probably going to put this into two parts. Was so interesting. Tell the story of the lady who complimented your quilt at church. What's the background story?
Well, actually, it wasn't my church. This was my dad's church, Oakhurst Presbyterian Church in East Lake. And my dad got married at that church. I mean, his family, there's still two aunts and an uncle that are living and they attend. But my dad and his brothers, his sisters that got married were married at that church and served there. And when they passed away, the pastor, Pastor Neeb Stroop, and his wife Caroline, they were there to do the eulogy, and for my grandmother as well. And I was sitting there doing one of my aunt's memorial services, and just thinking about how they have been such a part of our family. They've been there for births, deaths, marriages, and I wanted to do something for them. And in that instance, I was like, I'm going to make a quilt. And I wanted it to be a surprise. And that very day after the service, Caroline stopped me and she said, I want to talk to you about something. I've been wanting to talk to you about a quilt. And I was like, oh, we can talk later. So anyway, I got the quilt done. I presented it to them, and all of that worked out well. Well, what they decided to do is hang the quilt in the pulpit at a certain time of year. And there was one member who, I guess over the years she lost her hearing, but she would still attend church. And she wrote me a very nice letter to compliment the quilt and share with me what it meant to her. She looked forward to it hanging, and because of the colors, and she connected to it, and she felt that it allowed her to be part of the worship service. And it was just very touching. Most of the time you get a simple compliment. Oh, that's nice. I like the colors. But for someone to take the time and explain what the quilt means to them, that was very touching to me.
Okay. What's the story behind brown sugar stitchers? What made you start that?
Well, it's not that I started it, but I was one of the founding members. Before Brown Sugar Stitchers, I was working for a company, Sales Technologies. And I had a coworker who was part of a online, I forgot what they call it, like a swap, some kind of swap thing with quilt blocks. And I was walking by her desk one day, and I wanted to know what she was doing, and so we started talking about quilting. And this is about the time that my grandmother was, getting me started with quilting. And I was like, well, since you're here all day, every day, and I'm here all day, every day, if I could get some people together during lunch, would you teach us what you know? And she agreed. And our little group grew from maybe 4 or 5 people to about 20 people before it was all said and done. In about 3 years we did this. And I ended up leaving the company. And when I left, that was the first quilt group that I was a part of, the Sales Tech Quilters. And I'm still in touch with some of those ladies today. And it's been a long, 20 plus years. But I didn't want to let it go. And I just happened to be at the Wesley Chapel Library and got wind of a project that Doris Wells was the librarian at the time, or the manager at the time. And she was looking for people to display art in the library for Kwanzaa, I believe. Yeah. And so I asked her if she considered quilts art, and if she would display some of the pieces I had. And one thing led to another. She shared with me that there had been some other ladies meeting at the library and that they were interested in quilts. And she introduced me to them. And then she convinced us to be a part of another project she had coming up, which is how the first Brown Sugar Stitches quilt show happened at the library. That's another story for another day. But it was later that year, in 2001, that the group became an official quilt guild, and we have been rolling ever since. I don't know how many quilts our guild has made collectively. I don't know how many quilts. I mean, it's been probably thousands at this point, because we've been doing this for 20 years. But early on, we adopted a community service project, which would be for the Carrie Steele Pitts Children's Home. And our goal was to make quilts and donate quilts every year to the kids that are there, so that they would always have something that belonged to them. And so we've been doing that for 20 years.
Oh, awesome.
As our membership has grown, we're able to extend ourselves a little bit further. So now we also donate quilts to sickle cell patients, those that are getting treatment. We've donated quilts to, I can't remember the name of the organization, but it's for children that are born with facial deformities, and then, after their surgeries and all, there's a lot of hospital stay for them. So they're receiving quilts. Let's see. I can't even name all the things that we've been involved in. It's been 20 years. But we have worked with the Girl Scouts. We have worked with the community. We have gone into the schools and done presentations. I since my kids were in, let's see, my youngest would have been in kindergarten, I think, and my oldest was in second grade. I would go in and do a presentation with their class. And I did this with each of my kids from like kindergarten all the way through elementary school. And I would talk to the kids, and I would, share these stories. Of course, when the kids got older, it was one of these books became like a requirement on their reading list. But I tried to collect these already very nicely well-written books, very colorful illustrations. And I would share these with the students. And for those who could bring something like a shirt from home, or a piece of cloth from home, or they would pick from, the materials that I brought in, and we would make a quilt for the teacher. So I think by the time,
Nice.
and maybe second, third grade in elementary school, the teacher's like, if you get those Willis kids, you might get.
Lucky.
Yeah, it was.
What is the name of the show? Is Uplifting Life. Tell me how quilting or quilt making can help someone have an uplifting life.
Well, I have this saying, Rita, quilting saves lives. And I'm not going to go into details this time about it, but there was there was a time when I was very sad and probably depressed. Losing my grandmothers, losing my grandparents was very tough for me. And, I think because this is something that I shared with them, whenever I quilt, whenever I see a quilt, whenever I sleep under the quilts that they made, I feel that they're still here with me. And for people who understand that and have connected to it for that reason, it just touches you in a way. It's just hard to explain. But I've tried to convince people that it is a form of therapy. And so, if nothing else, if I identify a person that seems to be a little worked up, stressed out, or whatever, I invite them over. And it's twofold. I'll admit it. I want them to calm down, relax, and enjoy, and hopefully find peace in what I do. But then I want them to be a quilter. I want everybody to be a quilter.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for this time, Michelle. I have learned so much and I have thoroughly enjoyed this
You're
interview.
so welcome. Anytime. I can't wait to get you started on some quilting.
I'm going to take you up on that.
But
Yeah.
this was a quilt that I created for an exhibit called Black Gold. And it was based on a song by Esperanza Spalding. And so this was my interpretation of Black Gold. And what I've displayed here is a woman giving birth to Black excellence.
Oh, wow.
At the bottom is a birthing cloth, which you really can't see. I'll bring this down, but she's
Okay, I can see it.
birth. And on that birthing cloth, there are characteristics of Black excellence: confidence, strength, grace, integrity. But there's also institutions like Spelman and Morehouse. And there's also people, Barack and Michelle Obama, Harriet Tubman, Dr. Martin Luther King. But when I presented this, I shared that in the dark and stillness of night, she birthed from her womb greatness. She gave us Black excellence, Black power, Black girl magic, and Black gold.
Wow.
At that point,
That is beautiful.
thank you so much.
Oh, my.
So this was one of my quilts that was selected to travel with the South
I'm
Carolina.
sure it was.
And I'll send you some pictures
Please.
from this presentation. Well, I have to shout out my aunt Peggy Davis. She makes jewelry. This is my favorites. The creativity that was put into it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michelle, for
Welcome. Thank you. I appreciate this. This means a lot to me. I want to share quilting with everyone.